Hey Chris, how's it going? So I just watched your last video. Why? You know what, Chris? We've been friends for 4 years. I'm gonna let this one slide. I'm not gonna hate you. I'm not gonna chide you. I'm just gonna go on in my lovely denial that this never happened. Since he subjected me to a decent analysis of a horrible song, I'm gonna bring up something that I know that you're not particularly fond of either. My topic today is Mary Sue's. So the term Mary Sue comes from a story written by Paula Smith in 1973 called A Trekkie's Tale, which was published in a fanzine about Star Trek. It was about Lieutenant Mary Sue, who's a 15-and-a-half-year-old lieutenant, the youngest one to ever exist on Starfleet. He had unprecedented skills in art, zoology, and could do anything, anywhere, anytime. She was strong, but petite and pretty, and all these things, and so it was absolutely ridiculous. And I'm going to talk about Mary Sue's and how they can actually positively influence literature. My position is that Mary Sue's aren't innately evil. They actually offer a very simple way to create a character that is very relatable because it's a real person, because it's kind of based on you. But when they're allowed to get out of hand, they're very, very bad because they're uber amazing people that are just, in essence, quite boring. I cannot mention Mary Sue's without mentioning Twilight because that is the most blatant and pretty much awful example. So Stephenie Meyer puts herself into the story as Bella Swan, who is really actually the most flat character ever conceived and quite contrived and all those horrible things. She is ridiculously popular because a lot of girls can relate to feeling like that. Another one, which is more recent and significantly more well written, is the Millennium Trilogy. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Girl Who Played with Fire, and The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest. Stieg Larsson was an actual journalist. He wrote for a magazine very similar to Millennium. His character, Mikhail Blomkvist, and I butcher the name every time, is also a journalist who writes for a magazine. Mikhail's whole thing is that he's trying to bring down corruption in government and in business. And that's a really cool theme, and it's really exciting in and of itself, and Stieg Larsson decided to up the ante and talk about how Mikhail is apparently this amazing sex object that every woman wants to be with, and that's kind of cool, but it's also very, very Mary Sue-ish. Even his worst attributes are still extraordinarily positive. So I think our most famous example of a Mary Sue comes from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle as Detective Sherlock Holmes. One of them was a coke addict, one of them was a meth addict. I can't remember which is which. Either way, they had a drug problem. It's often been discussed in literary theory that Dr. Watson was actually Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's conscience speaking to him through the character that he wrote. Often Dr. Watson would chide Holmes, saying that he should quit his drug problem. I have to admit that I think that even J.K. Rowling, who is my favorite author, I think she even is guilty of a little Mary Sueism, not necessarily in Harry himself, but in Hermione. So I have to admit that this particular rant is brought to you by the kind folks at crack.com. They did a special a couple days ago, link in below, about fan fiction. In it, the number 2 thing that they talked about was Mary Sue's, and how some of the most successful literature in history has been done by people who are, in essence, making stories about being Mary Sue's. I think a lot of the limitus tests, the tests used to find out if your character is Mary Sue, are unfair and really, really harsh. It seemed that if your character was even remotely human and minorly good at anything, you would get docked points, and then it would be like, yes, you are writing Mary Sue. Okay, that's all I got for today. I look forward to seeing your video on Saturday and seeing who you're singing happy birthday to. Until then, Chris, have a great week.